why is it so incredibly easy to repeat bad habits? Like, eating junk food or procrastinating.
Oh,
But then
yes.
it feels so impossibly hard to form good ones. You might have all the motivation in the world on a Sunday night, but by Tuesday morning,
You're right back to your old routines.
exactly, right back where you started. It's one of the most frustrating parts of being human, really. But today, we're going to fundamentally change how you approach that problem.
We really are.
Welcome to this deep dive, where we're exploring excerpts from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you're someone who loves to learn, but, you just don't have the time for information overload or typical life hack fluff, you are in the right place.
Definitely.
Our mission today for you, the learner, is to bypass all of that. We want to extract the core, the neurological and psychological mechanisms of habit building. By the end of this deep dive, you're going to walk away with a highly practical operating manual for personal transformation.
It's a phenomenal text. And to really grasp why these concepts carry so much weight, I think we should look at where they originated. Because this isn't just abstract theory for the author.
Not at all. The foundation of this entire philosophy stems from a deeply traumatic event. At the end of his sophomore year of high school, James Clear was hit directly in the face with a baseball bat.
Yeah, that story is...
It slipped out of a classmate's hands.
Yeah.
And the impact was absolutely devastating. I mean, it crushed his nose, caused multiple skull fractures, and it completely shattered both of his eye sockets.
It's a genuinely harrowing origin story.
It really is. His brain started swelling so rapidly that he began having seizures. They actually had to place him into a medically induced coma on a ventilator.
And the recovery process wasn't some quick movie montage either. It was agonizingly slow. He had to relearn basic motor patterns, like simply walking in a straight line.
Right. And when he finally made it to college, his life was still pretty chaotic. So to cope with that, he started making these tiny, seemingly insignificant changes. While his peers were staying up late, he made it a habit to just go to sleep early.
Small things.
Exactly.
Oh.
He made a point to keep his dorm room exceptionally neat and tidy. He started lifting weights a few times a week. These were microscopic changes, but they gave him a sense of control back.
And over the years, those tiny habits snowballed. By his senior year, he was actually selected as the top male athlete at his university. He was even named an ESPN Academic All-American.
Which is wild when you think about where he started.
It is. And that is the crucial lens for this entire deep dive. This is not some fairy tale of overnight success or sudden sheer willpower. It's about the underlying science of incremental progress. He didn't just snap his fingers and become an All-American. He built a foundation of tiny habits that compounded over time.
Which perfectly brings up this wild story in our sources about British cycling.
Oh, the Dave Brailsford story.
Yes. Back in 2003, British Cycling hired a man named Dave Brailsford as their new performance director. At that point, professional British cyclists had endured about 110 years of just absolute mediocrity.
Yeah, they were not doing great.
In over a century, no British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France. They were performing so poorly that a top European bike manufacturer actually refused to sell them gear.
Wait, really? They refused?
Yeah, they were genuinely worried it would hurt their brand if people saw the British team using their bikes. So Brailsford comes in with this strategy he called the aggregation of marginal gains. How did that actually work in practice?
Well, the premise is surprisingly straightforward. You break down everything you can possibly think of that goes into riding a bike, and you improve it by just 1%.
Just 1%.
Just one.
Yeah.
So his team did the obvious things. They redesigned the bike seats to be more comfortable. They rubbed alcohol on the tires for better grip. But then they pushed it to an extreme level.
How extreme?
They started having riders wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain ideal muscle temperature while they were just waiting to race. They tested different massage gels to see which specific one led to the fastest muscle recovery.
Wow.
They even went as far as painting the inside of the team truck entirely white.
Just to spot dust, right?
Exactly, just so they could spot tiny bits of dust that might degrade the performance of their finely tuned bikes.
And the turnaround from that is almost unbelievable. Just 5 years later, they won 60% of the gold medals at the 2008 Olympics. Then from 2007 to 2008 Olympics, then from 2007 to 2017, they captured 5 Tour de France victories in 6 years.
What's fascinating here is the sheer mathematical power of that approach. If you get just 1% better every day for 1 year, the math shows you end up 37.78 times better by the time you're done.
Almost 38 times better.
Right. It's exponential growth. Habits are quite literally the compound interest of self-improvement, but of course the sword cuts both ways. If you get 1% worse each day, you decline nearly down to zero.
I hear that math, but let's be real for a second. If I go to the gym for a week or I eat salads for 3 days, I look in the mirror and absolutely nothing has changed. A 1% change feels practically invisible in the moment.
It does.
It just feels like a drop in the bucket. And I think that's where most of us just give up out of sheer frustration.
It's a completely universal frustration, and the author addresses it with this brilliant visual called the plateau of latent potential.
I love this analogy.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Imagine you're sitting in a freezing room, it's 25 degrees, and there's an ice cube sitting on the table in front of you. You can see your breath. Ever so slowly, the room starts to heat up. 26 degrees, 27, 28.
And the ice cube is sitting there.
Completely unchanged. 29, 30. 31 degrees, still absolutely nothing is happening. Then it hits 32 degrees, and the ice begins to melt.
That single 1-degree shift felt exactly like the temperature increases before it, but it suddenly unlocked a massive change.
So you're saying the previous temperature increases weren't wasted, even though nothing visible happened?
Precisely. And it is so vital for you, the listener, to internalize this. If you feel stuck trying to build a good habit, you have to realize that your work isn't being wasted. It's just being stored.
It's exactly like the potential energy in that melting ice cube. Or think of tectonic plates grinding against each other for millions of years. They're slowly building pressure until one day the tension is too great and an earthquake erupts. Your daily effort is simply building that pressure.
To push through that plateau, though, conventional wisdom usually tells us we need to set massive, audacious goals. But the sources challenge that entirely. The argument here is that if you actually want results, you need to completely forget about setting goals.
Which raises an important question. What is the actual difference between a goal and a system?
Good point.
Goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. The book outlines a few critical reasons why focusing on goals actually holds us back. Detail number 1 is that winners and losers have the exact same goals.
That's so true. Every single Olympian stepping up to the starting line wants the gold medal.
Yeah.
The goal itself doesn't differentiate anyone. Their daily training system does.
Exactly. The goal is just the shared baseline. And detail number 2 is that achieving a goal only results in a momentary change.
Right, like if my room is a complete disaster and my goal is to clean it, I might summon the willpower to spend an hour tidying up. But if I don't change the sloppy pack rat system that caused the mess in the first place, I'm just going to end up with another messy room next week.
Because you treated a symptom, not the root cause.
Exactly.
And detail number 3 is arguably the most damaging. Goals restrict your happiness. They create this toxic either-or conflict in your mind. Either you achieve your goal and you're a success, or you fall short and you're a disappointment.
You end up constantly putting off your happiness until you reach the next milestone.
But if you fall in love with the process instead of the product, you don't have to wait to permit yourself to be happy. You can be satisfied anytime your system is running.
Which boils down to this incredibly punchy takeaway from the book. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
I love that quote. And to permanently upgrade those systems, we have to look at the deepest layer of human behavior change.
Okay, let's unpack this. The book describes 3 layers of behavior change, kind of like the concentric rings of an onion. The outer layer is changing your outcomes. That's what you get, like losing weight or publishing a book.
The results.
Right. Then the middle layer is changing your processes. That's what you do, like implementing a new gym routine. But the innermost layer, the absolute core, is changing your identity. That's what you believe. It's your worldview and your self-image.
And most of us approach habits from the outside in. We focus on what we want to achieve, which leads to outcome-based habits. But to make a habit truly stick over the long haul, we need identity-based habits. We need to focus on who we wish to become.
The analogy of the 2 people trying to quit smoking illustrates this perfectly. When offered a cigarette, the first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit."
Sounds reasonable enough.
It does sound reasonable, but that person still firmly believes they are a smoker who's just trying to act like a non-smoker. Now, the second person simply says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker."
Subtle difference.
Very subtle.
Yeah.
It's a tiny shift in phrasing, but it signals a massive shift in identity. Smoking is part of their past, not their present. There's also this great story in the sources about Brian Clark, an entrepreneur who had been a lifelong nail biter.
He tried everything to quit right.
Tried everything and failed. but he finally stopped chewing his nails purely because he decided to get a manicure.
That story highlights the core mechanism of identity change so well. His fingers looked so nice after the manicure that he suddenly felt proud of his nails. He shifted his identity from someone who absent-mindedly chews their nails to someone who takes pride in properly caring for them.
And he never chewed them again.
Never again. True behavior change is identity change. The goal isn't to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal isn't to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner.
But how do we actually convince ourselves of this new identity? I can't just wake up and declare I'm a runner if I haven't jogged in a decade.
You convince yourself through your daily habits. Every single time you take an action, you're casting a vote for the type of person you wish to become. And here's the best part. You don't need a unanimous vote to change your identity. You just need a majority.
That is so freeing. So if you cast more votes for being a healthy person than an unhealthy one, your internal self-image shifts to match the data.
Exactly.
So if habits are the votes that shape our identity, how exactly does the brain build a habit in the first place?
That goes back to some classic psychology.
Yeah, the sources trace this all the way back to an 1898 experiment by a psychologist named Edward Thorndike. He took cats and placed them inside these custom-built puzzle boxes.
The puzzle boxes.
Right. And the only way out was for the cat to press a specific lever. At first, the cats would just scramble around randomly, poking their paws everywhere, biting the bars. But eventually, they'd accidentally stumble on the lever, the door would open, and they'd get a bowl of food.
And Thorndike timed them doing this.
He did. In the beginning, it took the cats an average of 1.5 minutes to escape. But after 20 or 30 tries, the behavior became so automatic that the cats could escape in just 6.3 seconds. What is actually happening in the brain to compress that time so drastically?
It's the brain's natural optimization process. You see, the conscious mind is a major bottleneck. It can only process a very limited amount of information at once. So the brain is constantly looking for ways to pawn tasks off to the non-conscious mind.
It wants to automate things.
Yes. It automates solutions to recurring problems so it can free up mental energy for more complex threats or tasks.
And that automation process follows a 4-step framework known as the habit loop.
Right. And understanding these 4 steps is how you gain control over the automation. Step 1 is the cue. This is the trigger. It's a piece of information that predicts a reward.
Okay.
Step 2 is the craving. Now, this is a crucial distinction. You don't actually crave the habit itself. You crave the change in internal state that it brings. You don't crave the physical act of smoking a cigarette. You crave the feeling of relief and reduced tension.
That makes total sense. I don't crave brushing my teeth. I crave the feeling of a clean mouth.
Exactly. Then step 3 is the response. This is the actual habit or action you perform. And finally, step 4 is the reward. The reward satisfies your craving, and it teaches your brain whether this specific action is worth remembering and repeating in the future.
So cue, craving, response, reward. And out of those 4 sequential steps, the author developed the 4 laws of behavior change. Think of this as your practical operating manual. If you want to build a good habit, you make the cue obvious. You make the craving attractive. You make the response easy. And you make the reward satisfying.
And if you want to break a bad habit, you simply invert those laws. You make the cue invisible, make the habit unattractive, make the action difficult, and make the feeling unsatisfying.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to zero in on that first law, make it obvious. There's a story in our notes from the psychologist Gary Klein about a woman who attended a family gathering.
The paramedic story.
Yes, she'd worked for years as a paramedic. She walks into the room, looks at her father-in-law who was feeling totally fine and chatting away, and she says, "I don't like the way you look. You need to go to the hospital right now."
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. A few hours later, the man is in life-saving surgery. He had a major artery blockage and was on the verge of a massive heart attack. How on earth did she know that just by glancing at him?
Because when an artery is obstructed, the body naturally pulls blood away from the surface of the skin to protect vital organs. After years of experience in the field, her non-conscious brain had learned to instantly recognize this specific pattern of blood distribution in a person's face.
She didn't even have to think about it.
She couldn't even articulate it at the moment. She just knew. It proves that we don't even need to be consciously aware of a cue for our brain to recognize it and trigger a response.
But isn't that efficiency also why bad habits are so hard to break? Because they become completely invisible to us.
That is the dark side of the habit loop. Think of the story in the book about the retail clerk who was instructed to cut up a bunch of empty, expired gift cards.
Oh, I remember this one.
She did it a few times in a row, snipping them with scissors.
Mm-hmm.
Then the very next customer walked up and handed her their actual valid credit card to pay for a transaction. Without thinking, she swiped it through the machine, grabbed her scissors, and mindlessly chopped the customer's credit card in half.
That is hilarious and terrifying.
Our responses become so deeply encoded that we act completely on autopilot. That's why the absolute first step to any behavior change has to be regaining awareness.
I found the craziest example of forcing awareness in the sources. The Japanese railway system has this safety protocol called pointing and calling.
Such a fascinating system.
It really is. The train conductors physically point at different objects and call out their commands out loud. They point at the signal and yell, "Signal is green." They point at the speedometer and call out the exact speed limit. It seems almost absurd to watch professionals do this all day.
But it forces the behavior from the non-conscious autopilot level back to the conscious level. And the statistics are staggering. It reduces errors by up to 85%.
85% just from pointing and talking.
We can apply that exact same concept to our own lives using a tool the author calls the habits scorecard. You, the listener, can literally do this today. Just grab a piece of paper and make a list of everything you do in the morning.
Wake up, turn off the alarm, check your phone, take a shower, make coffee.
Right. Once you have your sequence written down, rate each habit. If it's a good habit, meaning it casts a positive vote for your desired identity, put a plus sign next to it. If it's a bad habit, put a minus sign. If it's neutral, put an equal sign.
And you aren't even trying to change anything yet, right? You're just taking inventory.
Just taking inventory. You're bringing awareness to your automatic routines. And you can take it a step further by pointing and calling your own bad habits out loud.
Like the conductors.
Exactly. Let's say you're reaching for a cookie you know you shouldn't eat. Literally say out loud, "I'm about to eat this cookie, but I do not need it. Eating it will cause me to gain weight and conflict with my health goals."
I can imagine doing that. Hearing of the consequences spoken aloud makes them real. It snaps you out of that autopilot trance.
It definitely does.
Once you've regained that awareness, you can start proactively designing new habits. And there's a highly actionable tactic for this, based on a 2001 study from Great Britain. Researchers wanted to see how to get people to build better exercise habits.
Right, they split them into groups.
3 groups. One group was just told to track their exercise. Another group was given a motivational presentation about heart health to get them fired up. Neither of those groups did that well. Only about 35% of them ended up exercising at least once a week. The motivation didn't actually move the needle.
But the third group,
At a 91% success rate.
Yeah.
What did they do differently?
that third group utilized a cognitive tool called an implementation intention. Instead of just getting motivated, they were asked to fill out a very specific sentence. I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on day, at time and place.
Very specific.
Yes. The broad formula is simply, I will behavior at time and location. What this study reveals is that most people think they lack motivation, but what they actually lack is clarity.
So if you just tell yourself, I want to work out more, you're leaving it up to chance and hoping you'll feel inspired later.
Exactly. An implementation intention gives your new habit a specific time and physical space to live in the real world.
There is an even more powerful way to apply this concept, and it builds on a fascinating historical anecdote called the Diderot effect.
Oh, Denis Diderot.
Yes, he was a French philosopher in the 1700s who lived his entire life in poverty. That is, until Catherine the Great decided to buy his personal library for an absolute fortune.
Suddenly he had cash.
Suddenly he had real money. So he went out and bought a beautiful, elegant scarlet robe. But when he put it on and stood in his house, he noticed that his old rug looked terribly shabby next to his gorgeous new robe. So he bought a new rug from Damascus.
The chain reaction begins.
Right. Then his chair looked out of place, so he got a leather one. Then he needed a new kitchen table. Buying the robe triggered a massive chain reaction of purchases.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that no human behavior ever happens in isolation. Each action you take becomes a cue that immediately triggers the very next behavior.
Going to the bathroom naturally leads to washing your hands, which reminds you to put the dirty towels in the laundry, and so on.
Exactly. We can deliberately harness this natural psychological momentum for our own benefit using a strategy called habit stacking. The formula shifts from time and location to, after current habit, I will new habit.
So you just take something you already do reliably every single day, and you stack your new behavior right on top of it. After I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will meditate for 60 seconds. After I take off my work shoes at the door, I will immediately change into my workout clothes.
You are using the momentum of an existing rock-solid routine as the ultimate foolproof cue for your new habit.
So what does this all mean for you? We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. The overarching truth here is that your habits are not about implementing quirky life hacks or trying to force yourself to be perfectly disciplined through sheer willpower.
Not at all.
Habits are the fundamental building blocks of becoming someone new. You've got the blueprint now. You have to start small and embrace the math of 1%. You need to focus on building robust systems rather than obsessing over distant goals.
And remember that every tiny action you take is a vote cast for your new identity.
Yes. And you can design those actions by making your cues obvious, pointing and calling your bad habits to break the autopilot, and using tools like implementation intentions and habit stacking to give your new identity a permanent place in your daily routine.
It's a remarkable framework for taking control of your life. But to leave you with a final thought to mull over, we've established that your habits shape your identity, and your habits are heavily triggered by the specific cues in your environment. But think about the room you are sitting in right now.
Look around at your workspace, your kitchen, your bedroom.
What happens if your current environment is filled entirely with invisible cues that belong to your old identity? Can you ever truly change who you are without fundamentally changing the physical spaces where you live?
Oh, that is a powerful question to chew on. You'll have to look around your own spaces and decide for yourself if your environment is voting for or against you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep building those daily systems, and we'll catch you next time.